Now our talk is Mark Swaine from UX Guy. Mark's been a designer for, well, you can fill everybody else in that. So your talk is focusing on trends for the future. So I'll leave it up to you. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Let's get my mic on. My mic on? Yep. Thanks, Dara. So I just want to kick off with a little intro about me. So uxguy.com. A little bit about me. I've been designing products, leading UX, UI for a long time, right? So I kicked off in websites, CD-ROMs. I don't know if anyone remembers interactive CD-ROMs, Flash, XML. Wow. Right, so that's as far as back as I go. These days, as much as I live and breathe the industry, sometimes you feel like a dinosaur, right? So kicking in a few things about me. I'm a senior director, VP UX, been leading product design, spent a lot of time abroad, working around Chicago, Houston, New York, Toronto, working a lot with banks, TD Bank in Iraq, helping them fix a lot of problems internally with enterprise platforms, customer service. Most recently, for example, worked with TD Bank in their US tablet banking app for the US market, hardcore Android, iOS implementation. Lots of testing, lots of fun, working out frameworks, pure discovery, collaboration, really educating team leaders, all that kind of stuff, which my role has really organically grown these days into an educator, even more than doing, right? So it's moving that way. Huge into music, played music as a kid, kicked off, and obsessed with space and the universe. I've no understanding why my brain works that way, but I love space, universe. I love hearing about new planets being discovered and assembling everything in my head so my head works. So I get obsessed. I listen to a lot of keynotes from Brian Cox and stuff like that. And so I think the point out I thought I might put here would be really interesting is that I don't profess to really be an expert in this area. These days, I don't really think anyone is an expert or can be. There's too much going on. There's too much opportunity. There's too much niche areas to try and focus and spend your time in. And really, it's moving at such a pace that everyone is kind of scrambling to know how to title themselves, what areas to focus on. Am I CX? Am I UX? Am I IA? Blah. It's just out of control, right? So people are trying to fix that. People are trying to think about that more. And I'm going to try and instill a bit of that tonight, too. So that's a bit about that. So then, so what do I do? So I work a lot on SaaS platforms, web apps. I've been working with a lot of startups, mentoring their platforms, design, UX. I have been a founder myself, specializing in UX, a lot of research work, a lot of hardcore native iOS and Android work too, which I really enjoy, and a lot of UX audits and UI audits and that kind of stuff on platforms and products. As I said, the way the industry is moving and the way it's going today, I've kind of found today organically more than anything that I've really become an educator. I kind of end up being the guy at the table with X amount of stakeholders, trying to get buy-in and telling them all to shut up and blah, 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 and just trying to get them to buy into the roles, the agile approach, get them into testing quickly, getting mock-ups in their hands as quickly as possible to try and get it over the line, to get them thinking that way and working with you that way. We kind of face a lot of those hurdles today, I feel, because I guess there's older level management in particular areas that don't understand the processes, they don't get pace, they don't get investment, they don't get the resource issues. So design always suffers. So anyway, I'll get into a bit about that later. Moving on, just a little bit what's on my bookshelf. Some of it gets read, most of it doesn't. I don't have time. You can see this one here isn't even opened. It's still in plastic wrapping. Reading a good bit on blockchain at the moment. Really find that interesting. Getting into patterns, a bit of IoT. Always refer back to Steve Blank's startup manuals. Always great for lean product work. So it's kind of give you a flavor about the kind of stuff I read, what I'm into. Again, if I'm lucky, I get to read maybe a little bit of one every month or two. No time, particularly when you just had a baby, right? So life takes over. So I'm going to try and do a little bit of a Merry Meeker on this. I'm going to literally just plow through shit, right? So I'm just going to get through loads of stuff. You can stop me if you like. I don't mind. I mightn't always have the answer. Maybe someone else will. I don't know if you've ever seen Merry Meeker talk in Kleiner Perkins. She just plows through stuff. She's awesome. So maybe we'll make this an annual talk. Maybe I'll do a yearly annual UX trends talk or something like that. That might be fun for everyone. Okay, so I just want to do a quick refresher. So this is a quick quote for everyone, just to absorb before I get into the content, just to reset the senses on UX. Let me know when you're done. Okay, so kicking in, I'm going to bring on a little bit of a journey. This is kind of fun. I thought this would be good, probably for the younger people in the room, given I'm 38 now. I've been working in UX for 14, 15 years, and as I said today, you feel like a dinosaur, right? So in the early days, when I started out in 2003, 4, you're looking at, the typical web design agencies focused on websites only. Graphic designers were website designers were graphic designers, all HTML, CSS. I lived behind Flash, just Photoshop. Very little communication between devs and designers, very little collaboration, a lot of siloing, and of course being obsessed with companies like Two Advanced Studios. Does anyone here remember Two Advanced Studios? All right, okay. So I used to live and breathe everything that Two Advanced Studio released in Flash. Everyone would gather around their screens like, oh my God. And I actually and would you believe it's really interesting, because Eric Jordan, who ran Two Advanced Studios in Orange County, he now has resorted to living in the most northern point of New Zealand, in Kerry, literally siloed off in a farmhouse from stress. And so he's there now. He used to sleep under his desk and sleeping bags, trying to get projects out the door. The company's now shut down because Flash is gone. They were the Flash gurus. So I'm going to bring you through some of what I used to oogle over as a kid, as a much younger guy when I started out in my early days after college. So I'm going to try and get this over here. And so this is a little Flash site back from 2000, I think. And this is some of the stuff that I used to do for clients when I started out in 2003, 4, right? This is insane stuff. So this, so you get nice little sounds, animations. This is Eric Jordan. He's like an awesome DJ as well. He's very well known. So you got little drop-down menus in Flash. I can turn on and off my audio. So these are coming on for me now. Is it coming on? I have to play the audio. Is my audio on down the back? Yeah. Yeah. Try again. Doesn't seem to be coming on. Maybe I'll do a. Oh yeah, it's still loading there for me. Okay, so yeah, it's terrible, right? So at least I got that audio. So that's a quick example. So this is Two Advanced Prophecy Studios. This is one of their releases, which was awesome. Everyone oogled around their screens in 2005, 6. Hopefully the music plays here for everyone now. Is my internet connection bad? Maybe that's the problem. Let me see here. I'll grab onto my phone and see if I can do this. It's worth the wait, trust me. All right, let's go here. Anyway, okay, so we'll kill that for now. That's a shame. Anyway, lots of fancy music, lots of crazy flat stuff. And of course, these trends were all like, this is how I worked back then, working in Flash XML, building enterprise tools for the likes of Diageo, Pernod Ricard, all those kind of brands. Moving through the evolution, getting into 2007 onwards, I guess, you see a lot of ramp up in web design agencies, more heavily skilled web designers, in-house teams building, and company blue chip teams building also on their side. Social media kicks in, digital strategy, mobile websites, M.dot sites, responsive kicks in a few years later, 2010, 11. Deeper UX considering practices start to kind of trickle in and happen more, even though UX has been around since the year dot, right? It's only now in the tech area and sector that's starting to kick in properly. And so tools start to evolve. So this is where it gets really interesting, because today, I really find more than anything, there's so much going on, it's really hard to get your head around it, because companies are really shifting fast, right? So companies are turning into design-led companies only. Design is winning. They're trying to build internal teams. They're acquiring companies. They're trying to bring them in-house. There's HR problems. There's cultural issues where designers just don't want to be. So if you see the likes of particularly some of the banks like Capital One, who acquired Adaptive Path, maybe if you look at the likes of the Accentures as well, who acquired Chaotic Moon, Fjord, different fantastic agencies like that. And so you see this happening, ramping up more and more. So you look at the likes of the IBMs, the likes of Accenture, they're building up, but some of them are keeping people. A lot of these kind of organizations aren't design DNA companies, so they've got severe HR and onboarding issues where people don't stick around sometimes. They got to get that right, and they will over time. There's cultural fit issues, and there's innovation labs being built everywhere where UX people are being thrown into areas. TD Bank, I know in Toronto, out in Waterloo, beside Facebook and Google, they like built an innovation lab. They flung 150 UX people in, devs, designers, literally go make, break, and play and see what sticks. Because they're trying to keep up with the startup world and fintech and products and all that kind of stuff. So everyone's in a rush. And education is becoming probably the most important area of all for companies to stay self-educated internally. The UX consultancy model for agencies and designers, I think, is going to slowly die off, even though you see a large portion of the Deloittes and IBMs at it now. I do see in probably 4 or 5 years' time that model is going to eventually flip, and where the likes of these teams will be educators rather than project doers. I think that these most blue chips in terms of the client array want to build their own internal teams rather than be held hostage to the likes of these larger teams. It doesn't make sense from a budget perspective and a resource perspective, but that'll be a slow trickle, right? So then getting down to the bottom, startups, obviously we all know startup products are being launched every hour, daily, it's out of control. Design practices, everyone's trying to keep up to see if clients can compete. A lot of blue chips and companies that we consult and design for are playing catch up. In fact, most brands are playing catch up all of the time, really. They're trying to compete with startups. They're trying to build internal resources. They can't find resources because really good UX people are sometimes hard to find. Smaller market in Ireland, obviously tiny, tiny market here. Getting into then senior management. I probably shouldn't say this kind of stuff, but senior management in areas who are dictating and managing and running projects a lot of the time who shouldn't be, and who have very little knowledge, severe knowledge gaps in the organization, who are leading UX projects. It's either re-educate or get out or move on and let other people move alongside much quicker that know what they're doing to help users and customers. Okay, that's a little ramp up on the timeline. Now, I put this slide together to put the wobblers up, everyone, and I did it on purpose because I think this is just to show where we were. I didn't realize the screens were I thought I'd have a big screen at the back, but hopefully everyone can read this. So where we were was websites, mobile websites, CSS, HTML, sporadic design trends, drop shadows, they're gone, thank God, almost. A little bit of wireframing, a bit of UX/IA that led up to maybe 2009-10. If we look at now for UX people, where we are, it's a whole different world, right? So we got constant self-education, which is becoming in parallel as much as important as actually doing the projects. Training, reading has become part of, I've tried to bring it into my everyday and early mornings, but it's really hard. And training clients even more so. So everyone wants to train, everyone has to train, things are moving fast. Where are we, where are we going to be in 3 months? Will this decision be right, blah, blah, blah. So there's phenomenal pace, we're all feeling it. Sometimes we don't know if we're CX, we're interjected into CX, we're UX, we're IA, we're UI, everyone has opinions on all. It's hard to niche, but we've got to kind of help ourselves to do that because you can get lost down so easily. Moving on quickly, deep business model understanding. This one's probably one of the most important for me. And what I find with UX and design people today is that it's becoming really more important for you to learn about business studies and business models and markets and what works and what doesn't, rather than learning how to code in Java. Who cares about coding? You have to understand the business models first. You have to understand how you can get in and help the company survive, and how you can make the right decisions for their customers. And that's what it really comes down to. Spending days learning how to get a bit better in JavaScript or CSS or whatever it is, it's not really going to help you. Long term, it's really about getting in and helping the business. Explosion of tools, we're all feeling the fatigue. Every week there's a new UX tool launched. It's a little bit out of control too, yet these days I find it hard to find one tool that I truly love that does everything for me. All tools are doing a bit of this and a bit of that, and I drop in and out of each of them. Some of them are good and some of them are shit, right? So deeper research methods, getting more in front of customers and users, talking a lot more, spending a lot of more time pre-design stages, rapid prototyping. We all know about the lean agile MVP, get it into stakeholders' hands as quickly as possible, learn, iterate. We're wearing many hats today, product strategy. Sorry, I think this is one of the most important slides, so I'm going to get through this. Market research, it's already designed. Most stuff already is. If you look online, SaaS startup product trends, most are following the same patterns. It's getting extremely boring. Design language creation, which is an interesting one I'm going to hit on later. Deep native iOS and Android frameworks, APIs. If we look at Twitter, Fabric, Facebook Messenger, the API capabilities are exploding and out of control. It's amazing. There's so much to learn there. Getting down design founders and billionaires. The first time that designers have the potential to be a billionaire or millionaire with their product or designs. Designers were always in the background. We were always less paid, less everything. The creative right brains were pushed aside. Today, we're at the forefront. I guarantee you in organizations, the UX and design departments will become the most important in the business to validate the business model and the products. Moving down, smartphone devices, wearables, we're testing on everything. It's out of control. What is the user trying to do? We're getting deeper empathy, deeper context, deeper daily life and cultural research, which is far more important than some of the other activities that we get into and have been doing. We need to focus more there. Constant iteration of features and products, less full-on redesigns, not necessary. Iterate. Familiar UI design patterns and paradigms cross-platform, just getting really boring in the SaaS and web app world. Not much innovation happening there. I don't like using the word innovation. It's a little boring as well, because what does that really mean? Cultural shifts, daily behaviors, heads down. So this one's really important. We don't spend enough time here on cultural shifts and learning about everyday life of users. Heads down, conversational, everyone's living in messaging. It's conversational, it's getting less complex, it's getting more personal, it's image-based interactions, cards, bots, video UX, we haven't figured that out yet. CX is dipping into everything, cross everything. Complexion reduction of UI and UX, deeper architecture, and areas that I'm starting to get into. I'm not even going to talk about IoT, blockchain, I'm loving it. I don't know enough yet, I'm still getting my head around Bitcoin. Where does UX fit in here? There's going to be phenomenal opportunities in blockchain for UX people in a few years. We have to accept that design is the first touch point for customers and users. The first impressions, what people love. That's now creeping into organizations, and nothing is really new anymore. Everything's expected. Whew. Okay, moving on. I had to get through that. Right, okay. Almost every industry you can think of, UX applies. Maybe some don't. Smaller ones, maybe bird watching, stuff like that, I don't know. So what does the user want, or crossed it out, expect subconsciously? So today, less options. They want to allow products into their life, but a lot of the time products don't get it right. It's completely message-based. No one's interested in installing apps or products, really. It takes time, they're not interested. No one wants to search app stores anymore. Bad UX these days is not really accepted. Users don't accept it, and if they come across it on no matter what device they're using, they'll comment, right? And they'll notice it because they're used to using a beautiful phone that's beautifully designed. So why doesn't the apps and my brands work the same way, right? So there's a lot of that going on. One-tap interactions, push pizza, Uber, all that kind of stuff. Watch, still debating whether Watch, how relevant it is for a lot of brands. Some brands for one-tap interactions, it's working really well. They want a base for everything, less apps, more one-tap interactions, more home-based areas where all brands filter through. And that's becoming a way of life and a way of being, right? So is the app really of value? Users are questioning more and more, and it's up to us, so we're feeling the pressure more. They want habitual experiences where they spend X amount of time on that actual flow or journey. You should know me. They expect apps and products to know them. Good design is expected. Speech is creeping in, obviously. We look at Alexa. We look at other products like Google now and Anchor and all the new stuff that's happening. And speech paradigms are coming in. It's the early days. It's still not right. But I'll get into a bit of that later. Moving on. So where have we come from? Apps. I have plethora of apps on my phone. I don't use any. We all know this story. I'm not going to spend too long on it. We maybe use 3 apps out of all the apps that we have on a daily basis. We're flinging apps off all the time. I know I am. Just the latest, the guy from Dennis Mortensen, CEO of Amy, the new scheduling assistant AI. The average person down 0 apps per month spends 80 time in 3 apps. That they actually use. So it's coming from apps right into this, where everything is living within a messaging area. So we got beautiful imagery, brands, video, shopping, buy now, results, notifications, emojis, all ways that are evolving in the English language and how we communicate that need. Design patterns, principles, thinking, depth, more personal context. It's just getting deeper and deeper, right? Coming to watch, meh, I'm not too sure. Some brands are getting it and doing well, most aren't. I wear a watch all the time. Most of the time I don't know why, it's a pain in the ass. A lot of people hand it back, very little context. I turn off all my notifications, what's it for? When I turn my wrist, sometimes it doesn't even show me the time. I have to do it a few times. We all know that, right? It's a pain in the ass. So I really don't know why. Okay, moving on. We'll see how it evolves. iOS 3 or OS 3 for watch is meant to be much better. Getting into messaging and bot UX. Again, you see in the topics here, I can only skim lightly because there's so much in these areas that you could get buried down and thinking about. Okay, so quick quote from Chris Messina, inventor of the hashtag, awesome designer guy, working with Uber right now. So just let me know and I'll flick on whenever you're ready. I need a drink. Okay. Okay, so getting into a bit about messaging, I was trying to segue this in. So as we know, our lives are changing and there's more messaging apps launched every week. There's new paradigms being launched within it. We look at the array of where we're working with now, from Slack, Telegram, WhatsApp, Messenger. A few of the messaging apps are taking the lead. It's like Messenger, where they're exploding their APIs out to design and developers to get everyone hooked on inside Messenger. The biggest push in Facebook is happening right there now in Messenger. They're really trying to own that space in messaging. So we're all going to be living in Messenger for all our product services. It's all coming down the way. So the reason I want to talk about this is that getting into messaging and bot UX is a deep area, right? There's bots being launched every day for this, that, the other you can think of. Most of them are pretty shit. They're bad experiences. For designers, this area is going to be absolutely amazing, I think, because it's so deep, right, in terms of context and how this can work and how brands fit into these areas. It's a new paradigm, but it's not. People are leveraging and moving towards interacting with more automated services. That way, brands are starting to creep in. I'll show you some examples now. Brands are starting to do it well in terms of e-commerce. Amazon are doing it, CNN and KLM and different brands like that are starting to really utilize the messaging bots in Messenger really well. And some of the responses are good, but I'm going to get into why it's important for designers now. So designers now, and you need to put some of your time and effort into this, is to think about vocabulary, usable words within short, concise areas, natural language speak. How can your bot and your framework of your bot or your hierarchy of the branching of your bot actually entertain this in terms of how you think about language? Designers now need to think about language and really usable words within buttons, exact words. The environments that users are living in, where they are on the street, outside, in an office, is really now more important than design normal standard apps. Typing or speech, depending on keyboard and whether they want to use the speech in Messenger, for example, is going to become more and more important in around the paradigms in speech and study in that area. AI results logic, so responses back to questions that we ask. And if we think about those responses when we're playing around with a few of the bots and how it works, there's so much depth for us designers to think about there, to the shape of the message icons, to the buttons that come back and say yes or no, do this, don't do that. The color palette, the typography, the depth of that, the buttons that we now are going to start to use within this frame for purchasing. There's a whole new plethora of principles and patterns that are really going to force designers to think on a much deeper context. And it's coming down the way, right? I mean, bots are pretty crap today. Like, we all know that. A few are really working really well. So then getting into tone and personality, also testing. So if you think about the hierarchy of a bot conversation, it's like you go back to your typical flow charts and you're weeding the whole way down through a conversation. There's 10 variables here, 4 over here, and 3 down here. Most of them are crap, and then you get sent back to this one. You're like, fuck, I'm out of here. This thing doesn't even work, the automation. And this is part of one of the areas where designers are really going to have to come to the fore in how they design conversations. And as much as we are designing typical expected UIs for iPhone and SaaS products today, we're now, over the next few years, going to be spending a lot of time, more time, working in IA and flowchart flows, and getting back to system design and conversation design and thinking deep about those scenarios and matrix of variables. And that's all coming down our way, and we need to think about that a lot more. Moving on, tone and personality of the bot, have a bit of fun. Automation equals architecture. You are designing architecture, we're going back, but we're going forward. Amazing opportunities for designers. It's all coming, study. Moving on, UX design party has started. This was just a little bit way to segue into this. If we look at some examples of how bots are working today, Messenger and CNN, pretty clean, nice, instant responses. I know I was testing out KLM and they weren't, it wasn't active at the time, so I had to wait, so that was an immediate fail. So then you look at Amy, and that's your new scheduling assistant where you can link in to your email in bot format. You look at what Google's doing in Google Allo and Duo. Everyone is coming into this new paradigm of being on device. We're looking at brands, Yelp, everyone is coming in to talk to you. There's new paradigms and interactions, flows, sound, video, everything is in here. The UX of video, where's that going? Getting into iOS 10, obviously everyone is trying to play on this new paradigm. So if we look down here, there's a whole new level of heuristics that us designers need to think about. Brands are getting involved, sound, enterprise tools are going to live in this area, Slack brand integration APIs out of control, new design languages and patterns that we have to think about and write and test and deeper testing. Scheduling assistance, blah, blah, blah. On we go. Some good examples in speech at the moment. Does anyone use Anchor? Anchor is actually a good new social media app. I actually started to use it a bit to talk about my thoughts and put it out there to the design community, and you can hear back. Gorgeous UI, gorgeous user experience, put a lot of effort. I know Gary Vaynerchuk is really trying this out at the moment. He's talking a lot about it. I have fun with Anchor. OK Google obviously works really well out of most of my. So where's speech going? I give it my own acronym, sucks. I put that there because it does suck right now. So maybe that's the acronym that we'll use, who knows. Moving on, complexion reduction. So you might have seen a few articles about this as this is coming to the fore a bit more right now. So what you're seeing is that because we've gotten to a stage after flat design and a plethora of designs that all look the same and everyone's getting bored, but
it's 19 hours.
That's my reminder. She kicks in every hour to keep me on my toes. Moving on. So UI complexion reduction. So we look at the plethora of apps, products, startups, monotony. It's out of control. We're looking at the reduction. Once we've seen one platform, we've seen them all. It's extremely boring. Some of these paradigms are important, a few that we keep, but it's been a while since I've seen something innovative happen in this space. How about rethinking the dashboard? How about just keeping it down to one card with one graphic that I can use that can fit in a messenger? That's what we need to be thinking of when it comes to enterprise usage, right? So if I think about one brand, I won't say most, that's a generalization, but a lot of platforms, I'm on Coinbase for Bitcoin, one of my favorite UX platforms of all actually. So a lot of these platforms are living almost under the same brand. If we look at the dashboard for Coinbase, Box, Kissmetrics, even Intercom, who are awesome as well, but they all look like one brand and they all could live under one platform, and everyone's like, am I in a different platform? And so you see overkill of typical layouts, overkill of iconography, all that kind of stuff. Again, I don't have the exact answers to fix it, but it's all discovery and testing.
Can I ask a question, Mark?
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's tricky. But I, as a user, don't want to have to relearn anything. I'm lazy as fuck.
Yeah.
So if I log into a new service, and broadly speaking, everything is more or less where I expected, and everything more or less works in the same way as I expected, then the learning curve is minimal, and my use is likely to
exactly.
So I don't give a shit whether it's boring or not.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, absolutely. But the idea is that to break this kind of cycle of the expected, why not make it simpler again and make it and see if there's easier ways to integrate it into your daily life rather than logging into a desktop. It doesn't mean it's the a chunk of laziness, a chunk of copying. Yeah. Obviously, if you go on to Dribble and Behance, everyone is designing this shit every day and it all looks the same. It doesn't mean I'm right. I'm just throwing out an opinion, and I've gotten really bored with it. Anyway, who cares? Moving on. Background UI. Okay, getting into background UI. So this is something you see in Complexion Reduction. You see a few app updates. Look at Apple Music, Instagram, Medium, who are turning their UIs back into more of a black and white state, I guess. I know there's been a bit of talk about this at the moment. It's a little bit on trend. Some brands are kind of dipping into it. They're trying to simplify UIs. They're trying to simplify experiences even more and more and more. This has come out of the flat design whole flow, where icons are being kept to black and white. So it's to reduce it down. It's to reduce color palette. It's to emphasize actions more. It's to emphasize typography more, bolder type, background UI. Many startup platforms look similar. As you're saying, brand needs deeper UX consideration, reduction in color, focus, typography. Applied it. It's now you see it in some scenarios where it's going to start to creep in over platforms, simplifying down. And I guess this will, in time, lend itself into the bot messaging window. Moving on, some other examples of background UI. Medium, Apple Music, you see we're keeping UIs really simple, 1, 2 color tones, large type, all that kind of stuff. Not that I advocate Apple Music, because their first version of the app was atrocious from a UX perspective, but they're starting to creep this kind of stuff into their updates, right? So design continuity. So I'm just getting into a little bit of this as I draw towards the end. So I just wanted to chat about design continuity in what a lot of brands and large organizations are starting to build for themselves for the first time properly. So if we look at the likes of the IBMs, if we look at the likes of Salesforces, they're now actually making the effort and time to create their own interaction design languages that live and breathe and purpose for the company. This is probably the first time ever that this amount of gargantuous effort is being deployed into organizations and clients. Obviously, startups don't have the resources or budget to get into this in early stages, but a lot of the more established multi-billion companies like these, they're really like deploying hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of designers onto these exercises because they're trying to bring continuity across the organizations and all of the products. They're new products. The principles and patterns are the same, right from watch to desktop, SaaS, mobile apps, Android, iOS, everything. They want a language so people understand the language and can relate to it. So there's deeper context there, deeper research, deeper acceptance within organizations that they need to do this now because people want good design. And so another example would be Airbnb. I don't know if anyone has seen their whole sheet board of all of their layouts for every possible scenario of every interaction. It's amazing. They must have just spent, like, Jesus, a year and a half on it. Easily, so much effort, but so much time. That's why it's such a good experience. So moving on, Google Material Design. I absolutely love, I'm sure you all know Google Material Design. It's been unfortunate. I've never really gotten to implement much material design in projects. Clients don't seem to be biting too much. You don't see too many good examples of some brands taking it on where they should be. I guess that filters down with so many issues between KitKat and Marshmallow and whether people are upgrading and severe segmentation of devices and versions and stuff like that and where it can live and not live. Some of the principles and patterns, this is a good example for us to all think about and work off because what Google have done here for the first time in their organization, they've collectively across their products and apps brought in continuity. So if it's iconography, if it's type, if it's button styles and shapes, we know what they mean and do. We don't have to think. So that level of thinking has been brought in, and material design really starts to bring that into play. They've even brought back the drop shadow, but they've done it really well. It's nice on hover. So it's something for us all to really think about. So I was just going to have just a few more slides to get through. Just a quick one. Just a quick quote to close and wrap up on it.
We have time for some questions.
Yeah, time for questions. Anyone wants to plug in, I'll see if I can answer. Someone else can answer it. I don't have all the answers, but yeah, ask away. That's me. So UX Academy is something I'm working on right now, hoping to launch late fall. Starting to work on my own training platform for UXers and designers, and more so for enterprise clients too within large organizations. It's going to be an online push with that. So I'm in the middle of developing a lot of material for that right now too. Have I gone over? Am I good for time? Or no? Yeah, grand. If anyone has any questions, ask away.
Yeah, if anybody wants to bring their hand, if you have any questions, I come up with Mike.
See if I can answer them now.
I was just wondering on the messaging interfaces.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people in industries and things like that push for it and talk about it, and lots of blog posts about it.
Yeah.
I've yet to see
There's blog posts every
one
day
example
about
in
it.
the real world that works.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and it's not only and everyone points to, let's say, Siri and OK Google or things like that.
Yeah,
But
Cortana.
they're two and Alexa. They're the three examples that stand by themselves. Every other one is a completely different model where you have several different bots.
Sure.
On one platform, you talk to different bots through one platform, which is a completely different model to the only ones that work so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you think there's a chance basically this falls on its face, the Slack model for the real world, for normal people using it day to day?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like there's too much segmentation. There's too much failure with bots. It's really early days. Everyone is testing. I mean, there's been AI pushes in the past, obviously, and I don't know too much about it, but that didn't go too far. I think it's going to mature, but it's going to take a while until it's a real success and it becomes so woven into your everyday that you don't think about it or realize you're speaking to an automated service, right? And so, yeah, so you're right. So there's so much segmentation that way, it needs to fold down into one flow. You just want to talk to one area, one bot that's going to handle. So if I'm banking, I'm traveling, I want to book a restaurant, I want to book a taxi, I just want one bot to do it. I don't want to talk to different bots for different services. So that will segment. It's like we're going through this wave again, like we've gone through with different services and customer experience areas, and we're now properly getting into bots, but it's not really AI because it's not really synced with cognitive levels with the brain yet, and it doesn't sync that way, blah, blah, blah. And so that's going to take a lot more effort. And what's really going to take the effort to get this right is branching and flow charting and variables of answers. And you will have walls this length with flow charts written out of every branch of scenario. And until that level of effort and work is done, you can start to really feel the quality of a bot, that it knows how to answer me back. If it's wrong, then it's going to propose this back to me. If that's wrong, then we'll send you here. Here's a link, here's an image. It's a good experience, right? So it really is huge effort. And I know there's a lot of people playing and testing in the area. I am too. I'm playing around the area, but there's still an awful lot to learn. And it's deeper testing as well, right? There's so many branches to test off a bot conversation for the outcomes that could come out of that. Because if you think about it, users before even engaging a bot have pre-cognitive levels where they know it's going to fail. They already know before they hit anything, this is not going to work. After my second attempt, they're gone. You know, so that's where it is right now. So there's a huge barrier to get by that again. Yeah, a lot of work. Okay.
Hiya.
Mark, I just got from your presentation that it's more big organizations which will have in the future, which will dictate how the UX is designed and everything. Is that what you see rather than having startups? Or what are the challenges you see new companies will face? Yeah,
that's a really good question. Yeah, so obviously we see, like when we look at our news feeds early in the morning, we have a plethora of articles around how new organizations and more settled and formed startups are resourcing and budgeting these new UX patterns and languages and principles and putting this plethora of effort and budget into it. It's harder for the more smaller startups and seed round up to really get anywhere because you're just in lean mode and half the time you're going to die with the product and you might not. And it's whether or not, it's not just about the organization, it's down to the resource and the budget because the effort is so mammoth to get that right to a place with the product where people love it, that's huge effort, right? So if the smaller companies other than the larger blue chips, if they were to spend more time or they could spend more time, then they'd get better with their product, obviously, and people would love it more. There'd be a delight area. But between the blue chips and startups, I'm afraid what I see at the moment is that a lot of the banks that I've been working with abroad, a lot of the blue chips and stuff, they have the money and the effort to build these teams and resource them quicker, and they're trying to push and move in on the space to become design leaders because they see the market opening. It just boils down to the dollar, really, you know. And that's what they're trying to do. The unfortunate thing is a lot of these companies aren't really design DNA based. And I kind of struggle sometimes with that in my head. They're like accountants and auditors and stuff like this, and why are you doing design? That kind of a way, you know. So you kind of question that stuff sometimes too, right? Doesn't mean, so it's just an opinion on it again. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay, I just want to add to that conversation, because I'm a startup and my product is revolutionising the UX for a traditional type product. So I think that's the role of startups. It is about design, but it's actually going back to the other comment around all the dashboards looking the same. Yeah. That predisposes that somebody knows what they want and they're looking for it. Yeah. So again, you know, if you want to change that business paradigm for one and say, actually, there's information that people need, we need to find a way of getting it to them that they understand. Yeah. That's the role of the startup.
Absolutely,
and you can build UX and a UX solution around that.
Yeah, completely agree. Where I was coming from really is that there's such a plethora of sameness that there is room there for the large organizations who can budget and maybe shift it a bit. Yeah, but not for startups, right? Yeah, I know, yeah, you could talk about it quite a bit. It's really interesting. Okay?
And my comment was, I work within financial services and specifically looking at number 26, for those of you.
Oh, yeah.
How many people are number 26 users?
Yeah.
Okay. Startup coming out of Germany, they API into the banking infrastructure of a traditional bank in Germany. And almost their entire focus is based on acquisition through the word of mouth and through really, really sweet UI. Yeah. So now they are funded. They recently raised another 40 million euros. But in the early stages, a small team, and they're dictating design trends that will filter out into the larger banks. So fair play to them. They're leaders in the space as a tiny startup.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And even onto that again, if you look at what number 26 have done, and I know some one or two of the banks that have done some POC work in London for as well, they're really started to test the signing up for accounts and verification on mobile devices, right? Coinbase on Bitcoin does such a sweet job of it. I just flick up my passport, I get validated, I'm in, you get a PIN verification, and this is what people want. This is what users want. They don't want to receive a letter in the post to tell them their account's set up, right? Those days are gone, but banks are still living, in particular in that area, they're still, but they're figuring out, because it's such a big ship to turn, it takes a long time. Anyway, yeah, cool.
My slides are going to be up. Take a deep breath.
Yeah, sure. I'll just relax here.
It's a lot to digest, so I think it's lucky we have access to the slides. So we're going to go back to the area that we came from. I'm going to have some pizza. Mark's going to hang around. We can ask him a few questions, have a beer, and have a chat.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.